man, I can't start with a man, a constitutional expert. Brendan Ryan the whip, mother of God. I'll probably try to boom something out. I better stay with him. Sean, how are you? Thank you again for turning out here today. It's an important issue that we're addressing in the context of this proposal to amend the 35th Amendment of the Constitution. It's a public ownership of certain assets bill, 2016. It's fairly consistent with Labour Party policy enunciated at numerous party conferences over a long number of years, and it's consistent with our stance in relation to ensuring that particularly important and strategic assets remain within public ownership and which are utilised for the public good, the common good, and that's something that's extremely important in our context. So the purpose of this bill today is the Public Ownership of Certain Assets Bill 2016 is to amend the Constitution to provide for the retention of certain public utilities in public ownership. And if the amendment is approved in a referendum, it will not be possible for the Oireachtas to pass legislation to approve the privatisation of the companies that own our gas or electricity transmission and distribution networks or the public water supply and wastewater treatment infrastructure. So it's a bit wider than the norm, than the one that you're listing about. The water is obviously important in that context. And it was indeed what was also important in the context where I think Minister Kelly ensured that the plebiscite provision contained in the legislation that was passed. But this will be going to ensure and protecting it in a way that there will be no transfer of it by anybody. It will remain within the public, remain and the relevant and protection. You know, we've learned, we recall the Eircom privatisation, important grid being privatised, and of course we now have suffered in the years since no broadband provision in many of the rural areas that we live in. And Eircom is touching out everywhere, so I mean, you know, when you privatise things, there's consequences. We believe that this is a way of ensuring. So the essence of this bill is to ensure that assets and services will be maintained in public ownership. It's a simple bill, as most of you know, and we have prepared it ready for going. We now will certainly be introducing the Dáil. The last bill from last week has been sent into the Bill's office. This one will be sent in the next few days, and we hope that within the new configuration and structure of the Dáil, the new political dispensation that's now there, that this is fairly reflective of a broad view of a lot of members of the Dáil, and we would hope that it will get a good airing, and so good an airing that it will actually become the necessary legislation to enable an amendment, constitutional amendment to proceed. So that is it. It's Labour Party policy going back to near enough our foundation in this form today. John,
yeah. Just to maybe give a little bit more background on this, when Labour came into government in 2011, we inherited a situation, as people will recall, of a deal with the Troika, where Fianna Fáil had listed the potential of the wide-scale privatisation of public assets. You'll recall that during the lifetime of the last government, there was initially, and for a period of time, a move, for instance, to privatise the lands owned by Coillte. We saw that off. There was also a number of moves in relation not just to parts of the ESB, but in fact to potentially the whole of the ESB in terms of not just, if you like, ancillary companies and services, but including the transmission networks. And again, that's something that we discussed at length with our colleagues in government, Fine Gael. However, if you like, the makeup of the new government is rather different to the outgoing government, and we're not satisfied that the same level of protection will be there in relation to key public assets in Ireland. Why, it's a reasonable question. Why would we be concerned about potential privatisation of public assets and transmission networks? Well, there are two answers to that. One, Willie has just said. We know what happened in relation to Eircom, and we know the deficit that there is to this day in relation to the funding of public infrastructure, particularly in rural Ireland, but in fact, as people here know, it's nothing like it is in a lot of other countries, and that isn't just about rural areas, it's about urban areas as well. And the second thing is that we're a very small country, so the kind of privatisation models that you see, for instance, in our neighbour next door, with a population multiples of our size, is just not feasible in Ireland, because with a population as small as ours, you actually need significant large utility, significant large utility companies, and really for those utility companies to have a sufficient size to be able, for instance, to borrow funding successfully, they need in practice really to be able to make provision for the whole of the country. And it's something, I think, when you see suggestions that we would follow UK models in a rather slavish way, that people fail to take into account the differences, particularly in size and population, between the two countries. So we want to ensure now that water and the transmission networks for gas and electricity are in public ownership in Ireland, and that we give the people and the citizens of Ireland an opportunity to express their preference for that model through an amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah, this is a very important day. It shows the Labour Party is producing legislation continuously, again following on from our legislation on water last week, and a number of us are working on a housing bill as well at the moment, and it'll be a comprehensive bill, and it certainly shows that the Labour Party isn't standing back. We're bringing forward legislation, and we're going to leverage the new conditioning inside the Dáil, where we'll get these onto the floor of the Dáil, to utilise new politics, to be frank, and to see that after 10 weeks we can get such legislation into committee stage and be debated. And we want to see all of these implemented. And I can show you that there are many other bills that we're working on as well, and they'll be brought forward in the weeks that come further after that. I think it's important that the networks that Willie spoke about and Joan spoke about are protected. And they're protected for all the reasons that they said. We're not a small island. These are absolutely essential infrastructures, and they need to be protected at all costs. We've seen the legacy of bad decision making and the consequences it has for your country and the consequences it has for economic growth. And we all know that the big battle that every government has been taking on in relation to broadband was a result of a very bad decision made by a Fianna Fáil administration, and we need to avoid that at all costs into the future.
Just simply to add to what's been said, there was a lot of debate in government about trying to do this particular thing with water, because there was a real, I think, a visceral view among the Irish people that this is a resource that should never be open to commercial buyout. The only way to do that, to give the real comfort, although we enacted a law to ensure that it would always remain in public ownership, the only real way to give absolute comfort to people was to put it into their hands. So the idea of having a constitutional amendment whereby it would never change without the assent of the people is the way to do that. And I think that will give comfort to people, not only in relation to water supply, but the strategic infrastructure of our nation. One of the focuses in recent times is on balanced regional development. And that means every part of the country has to share equally in what's happening as the country gets back on its feet. And that can only happen if we can ensure that broadband is available everywhere, that we can ensure that electricity is available everywhere in the same degree as it is in the major urban areas, and of course that water supply is available everywhere. And that's the intent behind this proposal. Joan talked in terms of what faced us when we went into government in 2011. There was a privatisation agenda. They intended to privatise state assets to the value of €5 billion. Listed among those was the ESB. I suppose the things you stop happening are never noticed. But it was the Labour Party which really stopped that agenda. And in essence, at the end of our 5-year term, the only things that actually were privatised were the subsidiary foreign-owned elements of the ESB, a major power plant in Spain, and part ownership of one in the UK, and a divesting by BGE of some of its energy capacity to have more competition within the Irish market. All of that was in the proper interest of the Irish people, and we stopped, despite relentless pressure from the Troika, the further privatisation, which would undoubtedly, I can tell you, would have happened without us in government. So this is the natural continuation of a policy that Labour Party always views strategic state assets as important to be held in public ownership.
Can I ask